In this video, we're going to talk about the economics of drug testing. So most countries have some type of regulatory agency that's in charge of approving new drugs, right? So let's say a pharmaceutical company comes up with a drug that's intended to treat cancer. Now this regulatory agency, which in the United States would be the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, that regulatory agency has to make an important trade-off, right? They're basically trading off how long do they spend scrutinizing this new drug that treats cancer, right? So do they spend 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? They want to maximize the amount of safety for the public, right? If they don't scrutinize drugs at all and just let all drugs onto the market, then there could be a lot of drugs that end up harming or killing people, right? So they want to scrutinize this new cancer drug and make sure that it's safe. But by the same token, the longer the period of time that they spend testing this cancer drug, they're creating a delay that is going to lead to lives being lost, right? So it's kind of either way, there can be lives lost. If you don't do any kind of testing at all, then you'll have lives lost due to safety. And if you delay this drug for years, there are people who have cancer and could potentially be cured from cancer, but they're not getting the drug due to the delay, and so there's lives being lost. So either way, so basically the regulatory agency has to make this trade-off and figure out what's in the best interest of the public, right? So I want to sketch this out for you graphically. So let's say that we have on the y-axis, we have the number of deaths. So we have, and this isn't to scale, forgive me, but 100,000 right here, and then 1,000,000 deaths. And let's say that this is the x-axis is the number of years of testing. So we got 1 year of testing, 2 years, 3 years, and so forth. So now I want to kind of sketch out for you. So let's say we can think about the deaths due to the drug being unsafe, right? So let's say the cancer drug is not safe. Let's say we only do 1 year of testing. Then it might be that the drugs that we are testing lead to 1,000,000 deaths due to safety issues. Because we only looked at drugs for a year, there's a lot of people who end up dying, right? So, but as we go to 5 years of testing, now we have this amount here, which is less than 100,000. So let's say 50,000, 25,000. There's some small amount, right? So the amount of deaths due to it being an unsafe drug are going to decrease as we do more and more testing. However, there's another graph we have to think about, which is the deaths due to the delay of not getting the drug on the market fast enough. So let me just sketch that out. So let's say that this is the curve. This is deaths due to delay. Again, when I say delay, I mean that the FDA or whatever agency didn't approve the drug fast enough. And so while the drug was still being tested, there were people dying because they didn't get access to the drug who might have lived had they gotten the drug, right? So now we can look from society's perspective, from the perspective of society, what we want to do is we want to minimize the death rate. We want to minimize the number of deaths. Minimize number of deaths. It doesn't matter from society's perspective whether the deaths are due to delay or due to unsafe drug. They're looking at the total number of deaths, right? So the number of total deaths is what society cares about, right? So what we can do is we can add up, for example, with 1 year of testing to get the amount of total deaths. We could say, okay, well, what was the point where deaths due to delay? So let's say let's just say that was 50,000. Let's just throw out a number there. And then if 1 year there's 1,000,000 deaths due to unsafe drugs. So 50,000 due to a delay, 1,000,000 due to unsafe drug. And so that would be 1,050,000. Let's just say that's 1,050,000 total, right? So now I'm going to draw the total. So let me choose a color here. Let's go with red. So this is the total. Now I'm going to draw that. Let's say this total curve looks something like this. Okay, that's the total curve. So all I did was that each year we would go, and again, I didn't put numbers for all of these, but you get the idea, right? We just at each point add up the number of deaths due to unsafe drug, the number of deaths due to the delay, and then we graph this is the total number of deaths, right? So total deaths. So from society's perspective, we want to minimize the number of people who die, right? It's pretty common sense. So where are we going to have the lowest number of deaths? It's going to be right here, right? And I accidentally picked a part where there's a really high number of deaths. It's kind of depressing. But let's say that this is 975,000. right? I don't know if that matches up there, but you get the idea. So 975,000 deaths. So basically right here. So the amount of testing, if we draw that down, it comes out to 3 years of testing. So that's basically saying, look, when we account for deaths due to delay of not getting the drug out fast enough and people dying because they didn't get access to it, and deaths due to unsafe drugs, right? When we think about that in the market for drugs, for cancer drugs or whatever, 3 years is the amount. That's going to minimize the number of people who die from either of those causes, right? Now, here's an issue. That's from society's perspective as to the best benefit, right? But what about the regulator? What about the regulator? Like I said, in the US, that's the FDA. Whatever your country is, you might think about the regulating agency and say, what is this regulatory agency? What is in their best benefit? And you might think, well, hey, they're a government agency. They just want to do what's best for society. Well, sure, there are probably a lot of people there who feel that way. But by the same token, there's a lot of pressures on regulators. For example, when there's a death due to unsafe drugs, right? Let's say 1,000 people die because some drug got approved and it ended up killing people. And there's a lot of scrutiny now on the regulator saying, hey, why did you approve this drug? What are you doing here? A lot of these people need to be fired. We need to get rid of the head of the regulatory agency and so forth, right? But when there's deaths due to a delay, it's not quite as publicized, right? It's more public, these deaths due to unsafe drug. There's a recall and so this is more public, and it might lead to more issues for the regulatory agency. And so you might have, so this here, we'll say that this is the socially optimal level, is this 3 years of testing, but maybe the regulator goes for 5. Maybe the regulator goes for 5, and this ends up being the actual level. So you actually have this inefficient level so you have 5 years of testing when actually the socially optimal level is 3. And it's because you have to think about the incentives of the regulators. Not that they're bad people, they don't care about people dying, but they want to keep their jobs, and they know they're very sensitive that, hey, if we approve a drug too quickly, yes, people are going to be helped, lives are going to be saved due to not having unnecessary delay, but there's a chance that there's going to be an unsafe drug on the market, and that's going to lead to a lot more publicity and public outcry about whether or not we're doing our job. And so you might have a situation where actually the actual level, the actual amount of years of testing might be higher than the amount that's socially optimal.